Okay, let's have a look at these toes. So, when I look at your toes, first of all, one of the things that I notice that is very nice is how when you stand, your feet do seem to be fairly symmetrical. If you look at the spacing and the position and even the shape of each foot and each toe, there's a lot of symmetry there. So if the left foot represents this inner world, the spiritual world, the unseen, and the right foot represents the physical world, the seen, and how you're showing up in the world, there's a lot of cohesion and a lot of alignment here. And this is excellent because who you are on the inside is who you're showing up on as on the outside. And so I like that we're seeing that symmetry here. So let's start, first of all, the thing that I noticed first when I saw this picture was the outside of your feet. Do you see how the outside of your feet comes out quite a bit? You've got that sixth toe look. Additionally, just in your feet themselves, they spread a little bit there at the top. So this can indicate a few things. One is that sixth toe. The sixth toe is all about a global perspective. It's about an embracing of all humanity. It's about seeing a bigger picture. So you definitely have the gift of seeing things from a larger perspective, seeing humanity from an up above the trees kind of view, as well as having a global impact potential. The other thing is sometimes when the feet spread like that on the outside, it can indicate a groundedness, which we all want to be grounded. Being grounded is extremely important. But when I look at that, what I'm seeing is that you're leaning into the outside of your foot. So you're leaning in, your groundedness is coming from that side. But if you look at the inside of your foot where your arches are, and even your first toes, which we're going to talk about in just a second, there's a little bit of an ungroundedness there. And so becoming fully grounded, and yet you can actually be too grounded. And this can look like a feeling of sluggishness, a feeling of not wanting to move, even a fear of heights, just a few inches off the ground, or just a desire to not have your feet off the ground ever at all for any reason, even to step up on a stool or a ladder. Now, that's an extreme thing, but I'm just looking at this. And so where I do see an imbalance would be in leaning onto the outside of your feet. And that can have to do with this trust. The trust and prosperity toe are those little toes, and your path toes are your first toes. And so where you're leaning into is into this trust. And so because I know some of the things that are going on in your life, this actually makes sense because you've been put into a position where leaning into the unknown is an important part of what you're doing right now. And your path may have changed recently. And so this is all showing up in the toes. This is what I would have said even if I didn't know just a little bit about your circumstance. And I'm going to explain why, because we're going to move to those first toes, where we see that they're leaning or pointing a little bit towards the small toes. That's looking to the past. That is not a new thing. That's been going on for a while. And because you can see that it starts at that knuckle that's closest to the nails. When we're talking about changes that are appearing in the toes, it starts with the nails and moves back. The closer it gets to the foot, the longer it's been something that's been playing in your life in a major role. And so if you look at those first big toes, you can see that they start out, especially on the right side, they start out straight. So your path has been a lot more clear and grounded and moving forward straight. And then in the last few years, possibly the last 10, maybe moving into 15, but certainly 10 is when life path became a little less clear. as well as spirit path. Your spirit path is that left toe. And if you look at the difference between those two, I mean, at first I complimented you on the symmetry, and they are very similar, but now we're going to parse out some of the differences so that you can look and do a side by side at where life is showing up and where spirit is showing up, and do a little bit of a side by side with those. So if we're talking about that left big toe first, so we see it goes straight. 10 years or so ago, it starts leaning towards the past, looking to the past. So a big life change, some disillusionment with something in the past, perhaps finding out some things that you thought were true aren't true, or some kind of disruption in what your spirit path or your inner path looks like. And this happens a lot. You know, we grow up and we have a certain set of beliefs that were given to us by our family and by our culture. And then as we grow into who we are, we realize that some of those things are not true for us. Or, in other words, some of those things don't work for us. And so that can cause some shifting happen. And so that, just lean into that. When we have our one-on-one session, we will explore that a little bit more. And perhaps we'll be able to pinpoint some things. And with that knowledge, we can then move forward in what is going to straighten out both of those toes. And I'll tell you in a second why we want that. So you see it's leaning, the nail specifically on both toes, but especially I'm looking at that spirit toe, is leaning towards the past, and then the toe followed that. So remember, the nail shifts first and then the toe follows. So some things that I would recommend for this is getting grounded all the way into those inner toes. So when you're standing or sitting or walking, just consciously think about spreading out the weight of your body on all of your foot, not just the outside of your foot. If you probably took a foot impression, you would have strong marks on the outside and not much on the inside, even if you walked on wet sand or something. So bringing in grounding all the way into those arches. We definitely want a nice arch, some springiness, some bounciness, some flexibility and adaptability in that. And yet we don't want to be completely lifted off in that way. Also, focusing on grounding in what you do know. What do you know? What can you trust? We're going to talk about trust in just a few minutes. Trust is a big deal for you. And so, because what we want is for that toe to flatten out and twist. And so I would actually get that toe while you're doing affirmations. Affirmations like, I know what my truth is. I receive divine inspiration. I trust that the way will be shown to me. So affirmations like that, as well as asking questions. What is this toe communicating to me? What are you telling me? Great toe. Where's the spirit path that is being shown to me, but that I'm not seeing, or that I'm not going on? And then lightly twisting that toe so that it is becoming more flat on the ground and what you want. I'm a huge fan of using manual manipulation in conjunction with the knowledge that you have about your toes now and the affirmations and questions. We can learn so much if we just ask our body, what are you communicating to us? Because our body is always communicating us. The toes communicate at a really high and easy to understand level once you know how. So just doing that is going to be really beneficial. And same with your life path toe. You can see that there's an even sharper curve. So, 10, 15 years ago, some life changes in your life path. What does this mean? What does this look like? What does this present to you now as far as choices go? You see that nail is slightly more straight than what we have going on the spirit path toe. And so you are moving into the right path here. And so continuing to do that. I can also see that that toe is slightly more grounded than what we have going on the spirit path. So lean into that right side. And again, with a light manual manipulation, what is this toe telling me? And what affirmations would be good is I see my life path. I know what to say yes to and what to say no to, and I am provided for in all things. So these are just some good affirmations. I just need to take a drink of water here. Okay. And as you work on those things with those toes, what's going to happen is they're going to straighten out. And you can see that you have a large space between your first and second toe. And this is a gift. This is a gift of leadership. And because a leader needs to have the ability to stand on their own, to stand firm in who they are, even if people choose not to follow them. Now, we get to this point where what is a leader? A leader is somebody who has people following them. And the truth is, in this world, the world is desiring leaders. People are wandering. People are looking for someone that they can trust to follow. That would be a beautiful question to ask your toes. Where is my place to lead in the evolution of humanity right now? What is my zone of genius? What are my gifts? And you may already know some of these. And so asking as you do this is going to bring that information up from your body, up from your toes, and into your mind so you can do something about it. Now, like I just said, a leader is somebody who has followers. So you have a space between those toes that is, if there was a spectrum here where this was too much space and this was like right close together, and this middle line was the ideal, okay? And by too much space, that would be so independent that you're a leader without followers. Even, so individual that there's a lack of ability to relate to other people. I'm going to guess that you have spent a nice chunk of your life probably feeling alone, probably feeling like you are maybe just too different, feeling misunderstood. And that, my friend, is the path of a leader sometimes, because leaders are innovative. You are an innovative person. I can see that in your toes. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on, specifically that third toe and the innovation that's happening there. So here's the balance. We want those toes to be straight. We want that space to be strong, but we also don't want those big toes to start ignoring your other toes. And so that would be something as you move through, and I'd be really interested to see your toes here in about 6 months and see how they have changed as you've gone through this work and personal evolution of your own. And so that's just something to be aware of. Just a word of caution. Make sure that those toes don't start ignoring the other toes, because we do want to be able to relate to people, because obviously personal connection in this life is really important. So also the squareness of the space at the bottom of that toe is what I call queen's toe. And when it's square like that, as opposed to very oval, it really does show a lot of fire energy, which is a hallmark of leadership. That's why I call it the queen's toe. All right, moving on to those second toes. These are your expression toes. And when we look at these two toes, again, I'm going to just point out a couple of differences that I'm seeing. So in your left foot, you can see how that toe seems slightly less puffy, if you will, than on your right foot. Additionally, that left foot, the toenail is pointing more downward, and where any blocked energy, that puffiness is blocked energy, is right there around the base of the nail. The right toe, expression toe, is a little bit puffier. You can see that it's puffier throughout. So more blocked energy in there. And what I'm finding interesting is that second toe, the toenail is a little bit higher, a little bit lifted. So we'll start at the nails. When a nail is pointing down, it can indicate um, a little more pessimism, a little less hope, those things. Neither of these are pointing down to the point that that would be a major area of concern. And I tell you this because where it's trending, especially there on that left foot, is downward, which we can see based on what we talked about with that first toe makes sense. Perhaps there's a little bit of loss of hope of finding the path, finding your truth. And so just watching that, if it starts to point down significantly more, or you notice a change in that, there you go. There's an indicator, a clear message from your body that you're moving into that pessimist zone. Excuse me. On your right foot, what I see in this toe, puffiness, blocked energy. There are some things that you are ready to, your body is ready to express it. You're ready to express it. I'm going to guess that you are second guessing yourself. You are gaslighting yourself in your mind. Just if you listen, one of the episodes that I did on my podcast, the Essence Revealed podcast, is about gaslighting yourself. I recommend that you go and listen to that, because that's what I'm seeing in that second toe there is some gaslighting of yourself. There's things that you want to express, things that you're ready to express, a message that you're ready to communicate. And my guess is that your mind and your brain are saying, no, for some reason. No, we can't do that for some reason. And it could be because it might feel like it's going to separate you. And that's already something that you have probably experienced based on your toes, is a separation. And I call it survival conformity. Sometimes we conform to whatever pack we're running with. So be that a family, a social group, a culture, whatever, we will survival conform, because remember back, a few thousand years ago, a million years ago, if we were not part of the pack, it meant death for us. And so that part of our brain hasn't evolved that much. Its only job is to keep us alive. It does a really good job of keeping us alive. And that's a really important job. I'm a fan of our animal brain because it keeps us alive. What I'm not a fan of is having our animal brain run our life. And the beautiful thing about living in 2022 is you can find a pack. You can always find a community of people. It's a matter of finding it. And so if you've been survival conforming, which I see with those first toes, leaning into the past, leaning into away from your true path, my guess is that it's survival conformity, and that's what's showing up in that expression toe in your second toe on your right side. So with this toe, you can manually manipulate it, do some massage on it. It's going to feel good. And that is not something like your first toes. I think that that's a key part of what we're doing here. Second toe, not so much, but if it feels good, go ahead and do it. And just ask, what is the message that I'm meant to communicate? What's the expression that I'm here to express in order to lead? Because the way that we express ourselves, the way that we communicate ourselves is obviously a key part of our leadership. Let's talk about those third toes. These are your fire toes or your action toes. And I see a lot of similar things as I saw with your second toes in this one. If you look at the left side, there's a little less blocked energy, and that toenail points slightly more downward than on your right side, where there's a little bit more blocked energy. Although if you look at your third and your second toe on your right foot, you can see that there is less blocked energy in that third toe, and that toenail is pointing up. So this is all about taking action. Honestly, I love everything about your action toes. Those were just a couple of things to keep in mind as you continue to look at your toes as a tool in your life path and personal development. Your action toes, I think, are really almost perfect. They are straight. They do lean slightly to the past. So if I was to do anything with these toes, it would be to just straighten those out. But they're straight, they're flexible, so you can be adaptable. And the toenail there's a nice solid toenail on there, and they're pointing forward. So keep taking action. And as you continue to take action and even tie that action that you're taking into these other things that we've talked about for these first two toes, I think that you're going to see those toes really start to straighten out and move in a direction that lets you know that you are on path, on purpose, and on point for your life. One other thing to notice between these toes on the left foot, you can see that the connection point between those two toes is a little higher on the foot. It's certainly not webbed, but it is, there's a higher connection point. And this is just your, especially internally, your actions and your words and your expression, they must be aligned and cohesive. Those two things are highly connected for you. And if you're out of integrity in any way on that, it's going to show up. Fourth toes, your relationship toes, your connection toes. So you can see on these toes, the thing that sticks out the most to me is there's some callousing going on. Calluses are walls. They are walls that we have created to protect ourselves. Additionally, these toes, you can see that there is quite a bit of blocked energy. So this is relation and connection with yourself and with source, and relationship and connection with others in the outside world. So left foot is yourself and source. Right foot is yourself with the outside world and other people. And so this it tracks with what I'm seeing in those first toes, where you've possibly felt isolated in your life, misunderstood. And so our natural instinct, thank you, animal brain, is to build these walls. And the challenge with that is that if we have a wall between us and source, or between us and different parts of us, or between us and humanity or other people, we cannot have true connection. So I want you to just consider the question, what is the lifetime payout of living in a place of no walls and full vulnerability? This does not mean no boundaries. I want to be very clear about that. Having boundaries is super important, and we can talk about this if this is resonating for you at length when we meet together. So definitely boundaries. There are people, places, situations, and groups that do not belong in your energy. And there's a boundary there. And yet there's also boundaries between you and source, you and different parts of yourself, you and people that you can trust to connect with. And when we talk about trust, which is what we're going to talk about next, of course, people are going to let you down. Of course, you're going to let yourself down. But that doesn't mean that you're not trustworthy. It means that we are human. So I want you to remember that word, trustworthy and trust. So the question, back to that question, is what would it look like? What would the lifetime payout be of living in that vulnerable open space where you don't have walls, walls of whatever they're made with? I'm seeing bricks, I'm seeing metal, I'm even seeing a little bit of barbed wire, you protecting yourself. And we have that. And so what is the lifetime payout of taking those down and fully being able to connect at this super heart space with people that you choose to, compared to or versus living in a space where you are walled, where you are protected, and where you don't have that, because we think that we're protecting ourselves. And my question, in addition to you considering this, is, has that really worked? Has it really protected you? Because what I've seen repeatedly over and over with hundreds and hundreds of people is that living blocked, living with that wall, makes us think that we're protecting ourselves, but it actually doesn't. We still experience pain. We still experience betrayal. We still experience heartache. And so what we've really done is denied ourselves of the beautifulness of that heart connection in order to protect ourselves, and we still get hurt. And then sometimes we go through the wonderings of, what if I would have shown up in a different way? Whereas if we take down those walls and we just show up as us, we never have to worry about that. even if things don't go the way that we want to. So on these toes, I would recommend just some manual manipulation. Let's release that energy. Let's release those blocks. Let's release those walls and realize that boundaries are definitely something that we want to have, and yet we don't want them to be something that we have to defend with a metaphorical sword. It's just a part of how we interact with the world, so that honestly, our boundaries are rarely crossed. And when they are, we feel confident in communicating that. All right, that was a lot. I can't wait to talk more about that with you when we meet. Your fifth toe. These are your prosperity and relationship toes. Excuse me, your prosperity and trust toes. And like we talked about at the beginning of this reading, that was one of the first things that I noticed about your toes and your feet when I saw them, is you're really leaning into that trust, really leaning into that. And right now, that's a shaky foundation. And because what's happening with those toes, you can see that there's a lot of blocked energy, and they're hiding or really pointing to the future. So really thinking that trust and prosperity is something that is down the line instead of something that's available to you now. Additionally, it's hiding underneath those relationship toes. And your relationship toes, as we talked about, there's a lot of walls there. So asking yourself the question, why are you hiding? What are you leaning into those relationship toes? Or perhaps it's leaning all the way over into your action toes. I think that has something to do with it too, because action is a place where you feel pretty confident. You know that you will take action. And so perhaps that trust is leaning into your knowledge of yourself that you will take action. So manual manipulation of those toes, just a gentle massage of those toes. And when you're massaging these toes, start at the tip and push back into towards the foot, and asking yourself, and then a gentle twisting those toes so that they move up. I will tell you that after doing hundreds, possibly thousands of toe readings, those two last toes are the ones where we also get most of the generational stuff that gets passed down to us. And I mean generational, not genetic. Of course, there's a genetic component to how our toes look, and how much of that is actually just generational energy that's been passed down to us. When we look at our patterns, we may have been told, wow, you're a lot like somebody that you might have not ever even known, a grandmother, a great grandmother, or father. And so there's some generational things happening in those toes too, specifically in those trust toes. So opening up your walls, opening up the gates of those walls is going to help in that trust. Knowing your path is going to help open up that trust. Expressing and communicating what you are being called to do is going to open up the trust, because trust will work when you trust yourself and source. And when you have those things to lean into, like you're already doing, trust and source meaning God, the universe, the higher power, then that can extend outward, so you could be more trusting with others because you have yourself that you trust. Does that mean that you're going to let yourself down sometimes? You will. And other people will let you down sometimes too. And yet, being able to have gratitude for the human experience that we're having, and forgive for those innocent trespasses of trust, and even the not so innocent ones. Being able to have gratitude for what that showed you, being able to have gratitude for what you learned from that. And this is a lesson in life that is a challenging lesson, and that many people don't learn. I think that this is a lesson that you are being asked to learn. And so using those toes, let's talk more about those toes when we meet also, because I'd love to see how what we've talked about today, or what I've shared with you, resonates with you. Peel back additional layers there, and see how this trust toe works with the other toes. So I hope that you found this reading to be helpful. I hope that you write down your questions so that when we meet, we can discuss this fully. Thank you for your time. I'm excited to chat with you. Bye.